Welcome to week 5, engaging with the community on human rights. Wow, great discussion boards last week on the double consciousness and getting the story of the community member, learning their story and being able to talk about it on the discussion board. So really powerful stuff, very good. I really appreciate you going out and taking the time to do that. I think that goes a long way and advancing the goals of a human rights policing, and all of that was evident of all of our progress on these discussion boards. My father and I even posted this morning, Sunday, and so you can check out some of those comments. So again, please always try to read all of your colleagues' comments, our comments, and all that feedback that we give each other, and reading each other's stories and reading each other's replies and responses to replies. It's a very important part of the class. And so just a brief review, last week I introduced you to we introduced you to three important concepts. One with the sociological imagination, and that's used to kind of understand the world and your place in it and the world of the people that you protect and serve. And so understanding that world and seeing their point of view is important, and understanding how their personal troubles result from structural issues that they did not create, but nonetheless that they must deal with as they navigate their own biography and they make decisions through their own cultural milieus. And so that sociological imagination helps us understand that world. Then that second concept we offered you this week, verstehen, helps you make sense of the world. It gives meaning to that world, and it allows you to understand how other people give meaning to their own world as they navigate through the structural problems that they confront. And so it allows you to see the world from the actor's point of view, from their historical circumstance, from their structural positions, and from within the cultural milieus in which they live out their lives. And so that concept of verstehen is very important, to see, again, to see the world from the actor's point of view and to take on their own structural location in society and see in what kind of conditions are they making decisions as they navigate through life. And then many of you, I think, were impressed with the concept of the feelings of two-ness and the double consciousness. And it's something that we all have. We all create this sense of two-ness. Sometimes we feel it ourselves. Sometimes we make other people feel it as well, based on usually some type of socially imposed category. We're constantly othering people. And so I think to become aware of that is very important, because we all do it. Yet law enforcement professionals, teachers, professors, we're in positions of trust. And yet it's a very human thing to other people to create this sense of two-ness. And so in many ways, we have to go against our humanity as law enforcement professionals, teachers, professors, to make sure that we use our agency not to other people, not to make them feel inferior, or not to make them feel like outsiders because of these socially made up, socially fabricated categories. And so I think a lot of your discussion posts really showed your understanding and insight into this, and a lot of your own thoughtfulness as you apply it to your own police work. And so we very much appreciate that. I want to say something just for a moment on about the university and sociology. And I hope my father doesn't mind me saying this, but one of the, when I started the university, my father reflected back at his experiences at the university, and he said, the university was the most traumatizing experience in my entire life. The very foundation, the very core, the very fabric of my being was shaken. And he says, I've never recovered from that trauma. And I thought to myself, that's exactly what a university education is supposed to be. That's exactly what you're supposed to experience at the university. And unfortunately today, I think sociology has become consumed with things like identity politics and cancel culture, where you have anything that doesn't agree with orthodox, status quo, ideologically driven liberal thought is automatically labeled and automatically censored. And so unfortunately today, not all of the university, but much of the university no longer fosters this an intellectual environment or an intellectual climate. In many ways, it's become anti-intellectual. Just as an example, in universities today, the first question usually is, hey, what kind of, as they introduce students, what kind of books are you reading? What kind of new ideas have you explored? What is your intellectual inquiry? What are your intellectual interests? These are not the kinds of conversations that are going on today in too many of the social sciences. But I want to argue that at one time, sociology mattered. I introduced you to W.E. Du Bois, probably one of the most marginalized and underrated sociologists, but probably one of the best sociologists to ever exist in sociology. Think about it. In the late 1800s, he wrote this beautiful book right after his PhD dissertation called The Philadelphia Negro. And here, Du Bois, who's rich, wealthy, elite, hanging around with all these elite, wealthy, largely white academics. He moves into this poor area of the 7th Ward in Philadelphia, and he collects over 5,000 personal interviews, 5,000 personal interviews, trying to figure out about the social and cultural life of Black people living in a poor and segregated neighborhood in Philadelphia. And he noted that even that the Black community is not some type of monolith, but that it's an extremely diverse culture of people from all around the African and the Afro-Caribbean diaspora. And he was not afraid to confront the problems of Black on Black crime. He was not afraid to confront the problems of poverty in his community. He was not afraid to confront the problems of illiteracy in the community. But unlike his contemporaries, he noted how all of these were structural problems embedded in a particular type of society. So the Black experience didn't just occur in a vacuum. You had to look at the historical circumstances, the structural positions, the cultural milieux in which the Black lives coalesced and made decisions. And so he said, and unlike his contemporaries, he said that this is not, the Black experience is not the result of Black social pathology, but rather a structural problem inherent in a particular type of society. And he's able to address that. In other words, sociologists asked the difficult questions. They took on the difficult debates, the ones that didn't have easy answers, and they confronted it and they fought it face on with academic honesty, with a degree of objectivity still mixed with emotion. In other words, they were able to confront the world and its challenges and take on the big debates. And what a beautiful thing of what sociology was. And then fast forward a little bit into the 1920s, and all of a sudden you have the great women sociologists with a Hull House in Chicago, and how they went out into the factories, they went out into the community, and they became investigative journalists to write about the experiences of exploited migrant women workers working in the retail industry in a patriarchal society. And they produced some of the best scholarship in the world. Later on, the Chicago school theorists of the 1920s, male-dominated in the Chicago school, women were in the Hull House of Chicago. But nonetheless, these Chicago school theorists look at their students and said, if you want to know about the social world, if you want to know anything about social life, what are you doing in the classroom? Go out into the community, go out into the brothels, go out into the corner bars, go out into the bodegas, go out into the boxing gyms, go out into the churches and the schools, go out into the community and discover social life firsthand on your own to make sense of the world. And so these were people that were not armchair theorists, not ideologically driven, not careerists, not virtue signalers. They were blue collar, lunch pail academics going out into the community to learn about the world. These were intellectually curious people that wanted to make sense of the world, to change that world, to call out injustices and expose it and change that world. And that was, I think, the 1920s, the heyday of sociology. And then fast forward to the 1960s, this was the last moment of sociology until it died, where sociologists began asking the big questions about the nature of society, the state of society, and they realized the problem of all the wars, of environmental destruction, of racism, of ecocide, and they decided women's oppression, and they decided to stand up and to speak out, and they spoke up against power, and they got canceled, and they got canceled all the time. And they knew that it was important that if you weren't one of the professors that were speaking out against a problem, you were part of that problem. And so sociology at that time, it mattered. It confronted the big questions, and it was people were willing to lose their jobs, to lose their careers, and to get canceled because they were fighting for a cause that they believed in, from women's rights to gay, lesbian, transgendered rights, to civil rights, to environmental rights, to animal rights. There was a whole cultural revolution going on, standing up against war, standing up against oppression, standing up against poverty, standing up against inequality. And these people put their lives on the line. They didn't do it for a career. They do it because they thought that they could turn the tide. They thought that they could improve humanity. They thought that they could unite their brothers and sisters to a common cause, to advance human history in a way that benefits us all. They believed in something. And so I think part of the reason why I'm telling you this is because that's what I believe, and that's what my father and I believe. My father taught me to use sociology not for some type of career, but to do something good in the world. And this is one of our small ways of doing that, of using the ideas of sociology to not advance some career or have some type of benefit, but rather to do something to change the world, to make it positive in any type of way possible. And we think and we believe that police officers can lead that way in advancing some of these ideas we've introduced you to push forward the goals of a human rights policing. And so with this week, there's a section called Soulful Policing that I hope you'll enjoy, and that brings us right into the 1920s Chicago School. And I talked to you about, how they went out and got dirty, how they went out and learned about the community firsthand. And that kind of gives you a segue into what you're going to be doing, or what we ask you to do for this discussion board, which is to interview members of a community organization, hopefully one that's vocal or critical of police, about what human rights policing looks like to them. And so I give you an example in one of the discussion boards called Examples of Getting to Know the Community. And I talk about my experiences getting to know the inner city Black community of New Orleans. And so I really hope you enjoy that story, but it just shows that I could not have learned that simply from reading books or contemplating from within the confines of my own office or my own house. Rather, to know about the social world of people, you have to get into their community. We have to take off our lenses as, whether it's a police officer lens or a professor lens or a teacher lens or whatever lens you have on, and put on a particular type of lens. But I guess I'll call that the sociological lens, where you go in and you start using that sociological imagination and that concept of verstehen to understand the world. But you can only do that when you go into those worlds for the very first time with fresh eyes and new lenses, and learn and understand how other people give meaning and interpret their own world. And I think if you can do that, you will become the best police officers, not only in your department or your district, but not only in your region, not only in the United States, but the world. And I'm not one for hyperbole, but I truly, and we truly believe this to be real, that if you are able to do this, that you can become the most outstanding law enforcement professionals that we've ever seen in the world. That's what we're hoping for. Idealistic, maybe, but we believe this is reachable, and we believe in you. And so I ask you to watch, as part of the discussion board, the documentary 13th, which is kind of a critique of the criminal justice system in the United States. And it kind of gives you a bead of, here's how a lot of community members, here's how people view the criminal justice system as something that's very problematic. And obviously, as law enforcement professionals, you work inside that criminal justice system. So I think just being aware of that type of critique is important. And it's kind of an eye-opening documentary anyway. And so I think it's important for you to read. And with that, I think you can go into the community, as I said, and identify a community organization that you can talk with, find members of the members within that community organization to talk to, and ask them, what does human rights policing look like to them? And so I give you very distinct suggestions and guidelines for that. I posted it in the announcements, I emailed it to you, and I also put it in the module. So it's all there. I won't repeat it now. Nonetheless, we're very much looking forward to seeing what kind of conversations you have, what you found out. We think this is a critical, pivotal part of the class where you go out and figure out human rights policing from the point of view of community organizations. So this is important. We appreciate you doing it. We think it's going to inform us and teach us a lot about new ideas of how we can advance human rights policing, because after all, it's not our world, it's not just my world, it's not just your world. It's a world that we share with so many different types of people. And so we need to bring in their perspectives into this class if we're going to take seriously this idea of human rights policing. And I know that we all do. Thank you so much. As always, a pleasure. Thank you for watching. And we look forward to seeing you in the discussion board. And as always, please feel free to email us for anything. Thank you.